This video is going to give you an overview of modeling a shark similar to this. Now when you're modeling this, don't worry about the eyes or the mouth. The purpose of this exercise is to get you familiar with getting started and getting the general shape of the shark, laying out your edge loops in an efficient manner, and being able to extrude out dorsal fin, side fin, and the tail properly, following the flow of the fish. I'm going to go to poly mode so you can see the construction of this model. You can see in the tail that we have our edges and our polys following the flow of the tail, and the same goes with the rest of the fish. Our flow follows up the dorsal fin, up the side fins, and across the fish to the shark's nose. If you notice, we have an edge loop at the start of one of the fins, one going down the middle, and one to block the end of the fin. The same with the dorsal fin, at the start, the middle, and the end. And this middle edge loop is there to give more definition and to give you more vertexes to manipulate your object to get the shape that you need. If you notice, we're using an efficient use of our edge loops by having the edge loop that runs down the center of this fin be the same one that starts the dorsal fin. This gives you the ability to optimize how much information and detail you have in this object and only use what is necessary. I'm going to hide this object, and we can get started. Here you see I have my image plane in my front view. Even though it's the side of the shark, I have this in my front view. How we are going to get started is to create a primitive we're going to work with, and then we're going to start blocking out the shape of the shark. First, in the front view, we're going to get our vertexes to be the same height for the shark all the way down, and then after we get that blocked in, we'll go to our top view and we'll adjust the scaling on our vertices to match the contour of the shark in the top view. To get started, I want to use a basic cube, and if we look at the subdivisions, they all just have a subdivision of 1. Before I do anything else, I want to go up to Mesh and put a smooth operator on this cube. And you can see what it does to our cube. It tries to smooth it into a more spherical shape, and it gives us a little more information to work with. This is a great layout for starting organic modeling, such as a fish or a head or something like that. It lays out our faces and vertexes in a way that we could best optimize a shape like this. So the first thing we want to do is to scale this, try to match the size of the shark. The next step in blocking out our shark is to select our vertexes. So I'll select these and move them to the tail, and I'll select the front and move them to the nose. Now these vertexes right here are going to give us a nice rounded shape for the nose. So I will scale these down to roughly the same size of the shark's nose. And I'll leave the tail, I could scale this down a little bit. And let's move these up. If we look at the shark's tail right now, you can see that our vertices are not perfectly lined up. So if we look at them in their perspective view, you can see there's some curvature to them. Now, in order to be able to extrude the tail out, it would make it much easier to have this area flat rather than curved the way it is right now. An easy way for us to be able to flatten this out, I can do this in the top view, is by grabbing these vertexes, going to the scale tool, and you can see we have our curvature around this way. So if I take the scale tool and constrain it in this x-axis, bring it to the center blue square, it will flatten out all of our vertexes. So if we go over here, you can see we have a nice flat area that will be very easy to extrude out. So let's go back to our front view and let's start adding some more edge loops in to give us more definition. Let's go up to Edit Mesh, Insert Edge Loop Tool, and I'll add one right here. And if you notice, that our vertices that got put in here are not perfectly straight. That is because there is some curvature with these vertices for the nose right here. These are straight and these are curved. So when I put a new edge loop in here, it's going to do an average of this edge, the layout of these vertices on this edge, and the average of the layout of the vertices in this area. It'll make it a lot easier to work with if we straighten these out. So we can do this the same way that we did before. Select the vertices you would like to straighten out. You can see that we have a kink in our edge, on our edge loops, right, going over this way. We will constrain scale in the X, bring it to the blue, center line, and our vertices will be straightened out. So now let's move them to the head and scale them down a little bit. Now when we add more edge loops in this area and in this area, they will be straight. Let's go to Edit Mesh, Insert Edge Loop Tool. Let's add one by the front of this side fin. Let's add one at the front of the dorsal fin. Let's add one at the back of the side fin. And that is good for right now. Let's look at what we have. We have a series of edge loops at the front to define where this fin will start, and one over here to define where it ends. This is one that will be able to bring down the center to give more definition and shape to this fin. This falls into place, the center edge loop at the start of the dorsal fin, and then where the side fin ends, we will use this one to bring up definition to the dorsal fin, and then this is the ending. Let's go in here and start reshaping by grabbing vertices of that edge loop and resizing till we get to the size of the shark, and we'll follow this for all of the edge loops I had just entered. I'm going to move these vertexes to roughly be in the center of our fin, and I think these are laid out fairly well right here. Now I will add a few more edge loops just to give a little bit more definition in the front area and then in the tail area. Now with our edge loops in place, I will go to the scale tool, select my vertexes, and I will rescale the vertices in my edge loops to match the contour of the shark. Now you can see we have a very rough shape of the shark. We can go into our perspective view. And see what it looks like so far. At this point, let's go to our top view and start aligning the shape of the shark to match the contour of our image. So I'll go to Vertex and start selecting the vertices in each of these edge loops and rescaling to match the contour. But when I'm rescaling, I'm only going to scale in the Z-axis because we have the scaling already set up in this view. And if I scale using the middle of my scale tool, it will adjust the Y in my front view. And we don't want to do that. We have this lined up already. So if we adjust with the Z axis, it'll keep this perfectly in place, and it'll only adjust in the view that we need adjusted. Now, one thing you want to make sure when you're working on this shark, I have the middle of my object running down the middle of my Miocene. It's running right down the center of my axis, my x-axis. Don't move any of the points off of the axis. It'll make modeling your object much easier by keeping the vertexes along the x-axis in place. So now we can take a look at what our shape looks like. Smooth. And everything's a little bit more in place.